What's up guys, Intellitech Studios here, and today we're going to be doing the full in-depth review of my Dyson V11. Now, the V11 is technically not the newest full-size stick vacuum from Dyson. That would be the V15 as of the time that I record this. And there are some newer compact versions that have come out, like the updated version of the V8 and the V12 Detect Slim. But as far as the full-size, not the outsize, but the full-size cordless stick vacs from Dyson, the V11 is the second to newest unit, which means that, yes, while it's not the newest, it still is an interesting look in 2022 because a lot of these are being discounted, and even Dyson themselves will have these frequently available, both new and refurbished, at a pretty steep discount. So if you don't care about the particle measuring thing or the laser on the fluffy head, is the V11 worth considering if you want a full-size cordless Dyson stick vac? Well, I'm going to get the answer right out. The answer is yes, in my opinion. If you can find a good deal on the V11, then I would say go for it. Now, the V15 usually retails for about $700, so if you can get a V11 for like around $400 or $500 or even cheaper, especially if it comes with a bunch of attachments, then I could totally see it being worth the price. Now, keep in mind that if you are going to spend that much money, then personally, I think you'd be better off getting both an upright and a stick vac, so that way you could have a more complete cleaning experience. But if you have a certain type of household, you may not even need an upright to keep your house clean. And I'll talk about that more whenever we're talking about the power of the V11 later on in this review. But the V11 is not necessarily a mains replacement in my home per se, but it is pretty close. So if you have a smaller home with shorter pile carpet, or if you just simply have a larger home but you always clean in very small increments at a time, then this could certainly be your primary vacuum. Now, I'll get more into specifics later on, but I've been using this as my literal daily vacuum since I first got it working with the new motor assembly. I'll talk about that more in a sec as well. And I don't want to get like super crazy and say, oh, it's changed the way that I clean, but in some ways it has. I've noticed that I've been vacuuming every single day, and I haven't been skipping days as much because it's a lot more convenient to use this than to plug in a vacuum, unless I literally leave one already plugged in, which I do sometimes do. So, first off, let's get into the V11 as far as the handling and the weight, because this is going to be the most important thing as far as whether a V11 is right for you, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how powerful something is if you can't use it. A lot of people say that the Kirby vacuums, for example, are very powerful, but they're very heavy. A lot of people sing praises of Miele's U1 upright that's now discontinued. Those are very heavy. There's a lot of people that enjoy the newer Sharks, like the Apex and the Stratos and the Vertex, but those are incredibly heavy as well. So if you're like me and you have a bad back and you're wondering if the V11 is bulky enough to make it not be able to be used, well, I will say that if you are trying to clean the entire house at once, in the same vein that you would for a corded upright, which you, in the case of my house, you can just barely do if you have the thing completely fully charged and you're using it on the eco mode. If you're using it on medium mode with my house, you would probably get most of it before it dies. I haven't actually tried to do that, but I have vacuumed most of the house on one charge, and I did get through just fine. So you probably could get through the whole house on medium. But that's not the way that I've been using it. So I've been using it one room at a time, and for that solution, it's been pretty good. But, like I mentioned, the weight and the handling. Now, if you're used to a Dyson V7 or V8, V6, something like that, and you're looking to upgrade, this is a lot heavier. It is a lot heavier. The battery is much bigger, which means greater runtime, but it's also a lot of weight. This inline design is also much heavier because the bin and all this is sticking out instead of being supported by the bottom of the machine, so you have a lot of uneven weight there. Now, it is still weighted pretty good, but remember, it's weighted pretty good because of the fact that there's more weight up here and more weight down here. So it's overall a much heavier experience. If you're trying to use it one-handed, I've noticed I can use it on my couch or cleaning the mattress or something like that, but only one of those things. By the time I move on to something else, and I'm still holding it with one hand, my arm will get tired and I'll have to support it with the other hand. But if you're okay with supporting it with the other hand and using it two-handed, then the weight isn't as much of an issue. So, as far as the weight goes, I actually, believe it or not, do feel like this is lighter weight and easier to use than the flagship Sharks, because the flagship Sharks have the issue where the motor is above the actual base of the vacuum. So as a result, you're holding a lot of that weight in your hand, and a lot of that weight is dragging down on the handle. Now, because this is a stick-style vacuum, you're literally holding all of the weight in your hand. So you have a similar effect, but I found using the V11 to clean my entire house was actually a lot less straining on the arm than the flagship Shark uprights. And those are usually the benchmark for modern vacuums that are very heavy on my arm and cumbersome to use. So there definitely are other vacuums that you could use that are much heavier in the hand, and it's obviously a lot more impressive that there is this much power crammed into a machine that is this small, even if it is still a little bit bulky. Now, if you want to sacrifice a little bit of performance for something lighter weight, the V8 is out there, especially because they've just updated it, and there's also the V12 Detect Slim as an option if you don't like this trigger. Now, that's another thing we'll talk about, is the trigger, because a lot of people have complained about the trigger. I expected to hate it, but honestly, after using it, you barely have to exert any pressure on it. Now, whenever I was first using it, I would find myself clamping, just like instinctively pulling all my weight down on the trigger, and that would cause a lot of strain right here. But I don't really need to do that. I found myself supporting the vacuum with my bottom three fingers and then just barely touching the trigger and sort of supporting the top wherever the cyclone is or by where the filter is with my thumb. So it really just depends on how I'm holding it, but especially if I'm vacuuming down like this, I'll generally just let the weight of the vacuum push the trigger for me. So if you just let go, you can see that just simply holding on to it, the force allows you to push the trigger. So I actually found this to not be a nuisance. In fact, I even noticed, oh, it fell over. In fact, I even noticed that when using other vacuums, like the Dreamtech T30, which is one of my favorite cordless vacuums, I noticed when using the Dreamtech T30, I actually took the lock off and left it on the auto trigger mode, very similar to this Dyson. Now, much like the Dreamtech, which I'll go get real quick, now, much like the Dreamtech, there is an option to have the trigger on when you hold it. And there's also a lock where it will stay on. Now, I would love to see this feature implemented on the Dyson, because obviously with the V12 Detect Slim, Dyson has just admitted that there are some uses where the trigger is not as appropriate, and I think the obvious example is when you're trying to use an additional extension hose, which I don't have, but you can get for this V11. Now, again, I, in most circumstances, will just use the trigger the way it is, but there are plenty of people out there that have complained about the trigger and don't like it. So even though the trigger implementation, in my opinion, is really, really good, I still would like to have the option to lock the trigger on, just like what the Dreamtech offers, especially because, again, there are some people out there that prefer it that way, no matter how easy the trigger is to use. And I don't think it's asking much for Dyson to engineer an option onto the V16 for this to be a option, because there are some people that just want to leave the trigger on and they don't want to think about it, they just want to get the cleaning done. Now, I do think having the trigger on off is better for battery life, and it does instinctively mean that when you're not holding it, it's not on, so you're not wasting battery life. So I do think that for the majority of cases, having the on-off trigger is a great design. Obviously, that's the way that I use it on my Dreamtech, so that's kind of evidence there. When given the choice, I've used the trigger in the on-off way. There's probably another way of describing that, but you know what I mean, where it's auto on-off every time you push the trigger and it doesn't hold on. But again, it would be nice to have that option for those that are interested. In addition, comparing this to the Dreamtech again, as you can see, the Dreamtech, which again is, I don't know if I mentioned this before, the Dreamtech is my favorite stick vac that you can pretty much get right now. And there actually are some things about the Dreamtech that are better than the Dyson, despite the fact that Dreamtech is cheaper. Now, this Dreamtech currently retails for the same price as the V8 at retail, which is interesting because this Dreamtech is in some ways a lot more advanced than the V8. Now they both have anti-tangle brushes, and the Dyson has HEPA filtration, whereas the Dreamtech does not. But the Dreamtech has easily swappable batteries that you can just push a button and the battery slides right out, so I really like that. Although one thing I don't like is that the charging port is not attached to the battery, which is something I do like on the Dyson. When you replace the battery, you replace the When you replace the battery, you replace the charging port. So if your charging port goes bad, you just change your battery and you don't have to change your entire motor assembly. So that is one thing that I do like about the Dyson. And of course the Dyson does have better filtration than the Dreamtech. Now this isn't a comparison. I'll do a comparison of the Dreamtech whenever I get the newer updated version of the V8, since that's obviously more analogous to the price class. But I thought I'd mention it because there were some things about the Dyson that didn't bother me, but I know would probably bother other people. So I wanted to mention that. The trigger wasn't a bother to me, but I know some people will have a problem with the trigger. Now that we were just talking about the trigger, let's talk about what happens when you press the trigger. When you press the trigger, the vacuum turns on. What a shock, right? I do notice that sometimes when you're turning it on or turning it off, there may be a slight delay, but for the most part, I've never noticed that to be an issue. And it's very intermittent, so I assume it's just the actual digital motor turning off and on, and that taking a process for it to start up, which is fine, because it still is pretty much an instant startup, so no issues there. Now, whenever you turn it on, it defaults on the medium mode. Now, when you have the V11 torque drive head attached, the medium mode will turn into auto, but when you don't have that specific head attached, it will default to medium. Medium is the middle setting, and one thing that's really nice about this is there's an actual readout of the time that you have left. So in my case, I'm at roughly maybe 85-90% of battery, and we actually have a countdown timer showing how many minutes and seconds you have left. And I found this to be pretty accurate. Once in a while when I'm using this, I've ran the battery down a few times. I've been explicitly keeping it off the charger, so that way I can run down the battery a few times and see how it behaves. And I do notice that the time is pretty accurate, but once in a while, the vacuum will shut off and give me the low battery warning whenever this counter is at like a minute or 2 minutes left. So that may just be as a result of my battery being a couple years old, but who knows. That is something that I've pretty much always noticed, but it's not a big deal because even if it is true that a minute or two is shaved off the battery life, that's still really good battery life. And if we can estimate, that's about 2 years of usage, that's about 2 minutes off the battery, that's only losing 1 minute of battery every year. So assuming the actual decrease is linear, that's a pretty long-lasting battery, because that basically implies that it would be like 60 years before the battery runs out. Or I guess 30 in the medium mode, which I don't think that's exactly how it's going to age. I'm sure it will die at some point, but hey, that's pretty good battery degradation, because lithium batteries, like it or not, they're not going to last forever. I don't like the fact, however, I will touch on this real quick while we're talking about the battery. I cannot stand the fact that Dyson is all over the place trying to claim that these batteries last a decade or a decade and a half, yet they still insisted on decreasing the 5-year warranty to a 2-year on their cordless machines. That to me is really sketchy, because if you're going to make the claim that these batteries last 10 years, then put your money where your mouth is and give the vacuum a 10-year warranty. I'm just saying, if you're going to get consumers to truly adopt cordless as the future, then you need to show them that it's going to last as long as a good quality corded machine. And a 10-year warranty would be a great way to ensure that bit of confidence in consumers. But Dyson is trying to talk out of both sides of their mouth, and I don't like that. And I've seen plenty of Dyson brand loyalists, people who will make channels about vacuums that apparently are factual, allegedly, and they'll try to somehow spin that as if it's the default that these vacuums last 10 years, and that it's on the onus of an individual person to claim that they don't last 10 years, which is not at all how evidence works. It is a fact that when you're trying to prove a claim, you cannot prove a negative claim. That's a false dichotomy. You have to prove, if you are trying to make the claim, that a product can last a decade, you need to formalize that with evidence. And simply saying the word evidence and directing it at the other person who's trying to say that it probably doesn't last 10 years is not how that works. And it is safe to assume that if Dyson is refusing to even maintain their 5-year warranty on a device, then that probably means that they don't have confidence it's going to last as long as the corded uprights, which is not a good look on the company. Dyson can do one of two things. They can do one of three things. They can either A, keep the 5-year warranty, because that's been the gold standard as far as, not the gold standard, but that's been the expected lifetime warranty range of Dysons going back to 2005, 4. The only time Dyson ever had a 2-year warranty was when they first entered the U.S. market in 2002, and about a year and a half later, they updated it to a 5-year warranty. Now, 20 years later, they're going backwards. That doesn't seem right. I guess this wouldn't be 20 years because this machine's been out for a couple of years, but you know what I mean. If Dyson's going to make the claim that this battery lasts a decade, they need to put their money where their mouth is and give it at least a 5-year warranty like their old vacuums had, or give it a 10-year warranty. Or if you really want to, you can have a separate warranty on the battery than you do on the rest of the machine, which wouldn't make any sense in this context, because if the machine is a 5-year warranty but the battery is a 2-year warranty and Dyson's trying to claim the battery will last 10 years, then again, that's not very good either. So no matter which way you slice it, the warranty situation on this is very confusing. However, it is worth noting that my machine is technically out of warranty, but the motor assembly that had died on mine within warranty was out of stock. So it took literally 6 months for me to get this machine working because they never got the motor assembly for this back in stock. I had to actually get it from my local Dyson service center, which thankfully, because I had to wait so long, even though by the time I got the replacement it was well out of warranty, I was still able to get a replacement at no charge, which I do really appreciate. So it is possible that if your machine is out of warranty that Dyson may still take care of you, but the whole point of a warranty is that you're confident that they will take care of you, because there's an actual legally binding contract. Those of you that are fans of Linus Tech Tips and are familiar with the backpack controversy that just happened are well familiar with the controversy of not having a formalized warranty, but still trying to make claims about the longevity of a product. So, Dyson trying to make the claim that this battery lasts 10 years, whether it's true or not, does not seem like they're confident if they're not willing to back it up with a proper warranty. So the warranty on this machine is only 2 years, and for the price point, I don't exactly think that's acceptable when the company is trying to make the point that this battery lasts 10-15 years. And this is coming from someone that does enjoy Dyson products. I will call it like it is, because I do like this machine, but I'm not stupid. I know this is not going to last a decade. I know this is going to break in probably, I don't know how many years. But I'm very careful with it. I did drop it once. We'll talk about that later, but it's obviously fine. Other than that, we will see. We will just simply see what happens. So that little rant aside, the battery on this is really good. So like I mentioned, with this button right here, we can see we have 36 minutes left in the medium mode. If I switch over to Eco, 66 minutes, and over to Boost, only 8 minutes. Now, I don't recommend using it on Boost. There's not really a reason to. I have never found a reason to use it on Boost. And I remember when I first got this machine, initially complaining about the fact that I couldn't default the machine to anything other than medium. I wanted to set it on Eco, and I'm sure there's other people that wanted to set it on Boost. I don't know why, but there you go. It defaults to medium every single time. And at first I had a problem with this, but now after using it more and more, I actually think that's a sweet spot. Because medium is perfectly powerful enough for any messes that I've been using it for, even deep cleaning carpets. It's been pretty good on medium. And I don't use Boost because it kills the battery so badly that even if it does perform better, which some other YouTubers have shown that the Boost mode really does clean well, but I personally would rather take the hit in performance in order to have an actual usable battery. But the jump from medium down to medium from boost is a lot more noticeable than the jump from medium down to eco, because while the medium gets you a little over 30 minutes of battery life, the eco mode will get you about 70 minutes of battery life in my experience, at least according to that timer and running it down a few times. Again, maybe like add a margin of error of like a minute or two for my particular battery. But medium mode I found was the best because I never ran it out in a single cleaning session, and I found myself when I was using it on eco trying to run down the battery by using it and using it and using it, and I'm sure the amount of times that I used it would have been made up for just using the more powerful mode in the first place. So, in my opinion, medium mode is the way to go, and if you have the proper V11 torque drive cleaner head, the medium mode will actually switch to auto when you have that head connected. And that head has some gates on it to let you adjust the red flaps on the front. It has a bit of a different brush design with the carbon fiber bristles, and it will actually sense what surface you're on and adjust the power of the machine accordingly. Now, I don't have that head because I got this machine secondhand, so it was missing a lot of pieces. It only came with this turbo brush. I had to buy everything else separately. So I actually have the head from a V10 and the wand from a V7, but they are all interchangeable. They have the same button. I don't know why this has tape on it. Don't ask me again. I bought it secondhand. But this particular cleaner head is the same that you get on the V7, the V8, and the V10. So it's not exactly the correct head, but it does work. So keep in mind that my review of this head obviously would not apply to the proper head that comes with this machine. So keep in mind, the head that comes with this machine is supposed to be a little bit better. And I believe this machine may have been updated with the motor bar, which is, again, another different cleaner head, but I could be wrong about that. So the cleaner head that it comes with is really good. Oh, I just realized it actually does have carbon fiber bristles. So this cleaner head does work very well. I personally prefer to use it on carpets. I don't like using it on floors as much, even though it does pick up fine on floors. My floors are very crappy, like peel and stick tile that are literally falling apart and like coming unglued from the floor. I live in a pretty crappy house, but what do you expect? It's a fixer-upper. And I'm not worried about scratching the floor, and I have yet to scratch the floor with this power head. So if you have a delicate floor, I'd recommend getting the fluffy head, because that will do better. It's a lot softer of material. But this head does work at picking up on floors. It's not as good as the Ball Animal 3 in my experience, but again, if I had the proper torque drive head, it might have done a little bit better. Now, one problem that I do have with this head is that this little rubber bar on the back, whenever I'm pulling it on a certain area of carpet, the head will kind of jiggle a little bit and not maintain contact with the floor whenever I'm pulling it backwards. So I'm not sure why that is, but I have noticed after using it more and more, it's kind of not been doing it as much. I don't know if I'm just breaking it in more or what, but is what it is. You do have a ball right here, or at least two wheels that are supposed to look like a ball, and these feel very cheap, but they do work. And the swiveling joint on this and all that is pretty fine. I do find that on bare floors, this will kind of flop around and be kind of hard to control, but on carpets, it's just fine, other than you can kind of see that issue I'm talking about, where I pull it back and it just kind of bounces. Yeah, that's not very good. So again, I don't know why there's tape on it. I don't think that's the issue, but again, please keep that in mind. Please don't yell at me. Please don't yell at me in the comments for the power head having tape on it. I've seen this issue reported with other power heads, including ones that did not have tape on them, so I don't think that's the reason why mine is doing it. As far as the wand, it's a pretty basic wand. The one that this is supposed to come with is identical. It's just blue instead of orange. But this is metal. It would be nice if Dyson made this telescoping, or made an optional wand available separately that you could swap out for this that was telescoping, for those who want a shorter wand or a longer wand for more reach. I'm not sure if you can buy another one of these wands and daisy chain them. I'm not sure about that, but whenever I get another one of these, I will test that. Now, a lot of people have complained about the fact that trying to get underneath things is really difficult because of how bulky this machine is, but Dyson has recently addressed that with a little articulating joint that you can attach to the wand and to the unit that will allow it to then slide underneath furniture. So there are ways to get around that now. I will say that whenever you're trying to put this underneath furniture and you're trying to swivel it, it'll just kind of flop around like that. It doesn't actually stay in the direction you're trying to push it, so you can really only push it forward and back. You can't really use the ball to get underneath because it'll just kind of flop around like that. But again, maybe the newer heads are better. I can only comment on the one that I have. But the actual performance that I've been getting out of this head has been pretty good. You can see there's a lot of dust in here, so it's obviously doing a good job. I obviously need to clean it out, but it is working. It is doing its job. Now, a lot of people have reported the carbon fiber bristles wearing out. A few of mine are messed up, so yeah, obviously this one side is not going to clean as well. But I haven't really bothered to change the brush roller because that's not really that big of a deal. Once it actually rips out more of the carbon fiber bristles on more of the roller, then maybe I'll change it or just get a whole new cleaner head, considering I don't have the proper head anyways. So, yeah. And I don't have the smaller attachments that this comes with. Yes, I know I'm not a good reviewer. I don't have all the pieces. But it comes with a basic crevice tool. It comes with the same junky upholstery tool dusting brush combo that's been with all the Dyson stick and handheld vacuums since the DC16. And you can also get a soft dusting brush as well that some models come with, and that obviously works great. I have the version that goes on the uprights, and it does the trick. One tool that I love is this mini motorized tool. Now, Dyson has recently replaced this with the hair screw tool. You can see this one does get tangled, whereas the new one doesn't. But this works very well. This, combined with this machine, has been my go-to method for cleaning couches and mattresses, because I really need to clean my mattresses, or my mattress, and my couches every single day, because I have to clean my mattress because, well, it's a mattress. You want to clean it every day because it just gets gross. You know, all your dead skin comes off when you're sleeping, and if you're like me, you a lot of times forget to put a sheet on your mattress because you wash the sheet and then it gets mixed up in the laundry, and then you forget to put it back on. A lot of you guys know what I'm talking about. And so, you know, you gotta clean your mattress. And then also, we got a set of brown couches, even though we have a dog that sheds her white undercoat. Great idea, right? So you can see the corgi glitter all over the couch every single time she sits down on it, so you have to vacuum it every single time in order for it to look good. So that's what I've been doing. And out of every turbo tool that I've ever used, this one does the greatest job, which is pretty... sorry, my brain just shut off. It's rebooting. Give me a sec. Which is pretty impressive because of the fact that this is a cordless machine. Now, the brush is motorized, so it should work well. But even comparing it to the motorized brushes that you get on Sharks that are corded machines, those suck, honestly, even compared to a lot of air-driven turbo tools like the ones that comes with Dysons and Bissells and all that. I find that this turbo brush, this motorized turbo brush, is the best turbo brush that I've ever used. It cleans really well, it agitates very well, it's easy to service. You can just very easily pop this out and pop out the brush hole and clean it off, and all of that is really good. My biggest complaint with it is that the agitation is so good, this is really gross, that a lot of debris just gets like bounced up and into this little crevice here, which is really gross because this is a really small area. So after using it for like a week, you can see all the dander and the dead skin that's just accumulated in this little slot right here, which no other reviewer that I've ever seen review this tool has ever mentioned that. I don't know if it just only happens to me or what, but no reviewer has ever mentioned the fact that gunk gets stuck in here, and it's really gross. Now, there's no electronics in this part, so you can just wash this part out, or just get a Q-tip, spray some alcohol on it, and just wipe it out. So it's easy enough to clean that part out, but it still is kind of gross. And honestly, I think it might have been better if this, I mean, I get the design because this curved bit allows it to actually sort of contour to what you're vacuuming, and I do like that. Having this swiveling plate does a good job at making sure that it keeps contact. You can even vacuum stairs completely vertically, the backs of stairs, If you remember that Eureka turbo brush that came out like a decade ago, that had it was called the riser visor, where you had a cover that you could flip down, and then the brush would show vertically, and you could use that to vacuum the back of your carpeted stairs. This reminds me a lot of that. So you basically have that functionality without having to move a visor. You just move the actual sole plate. So that works really well. And you do have a little felt strip right here that you can very easily just wipe off whenever it gets dusty. So all that works good. And of course you have the same quick release as all the modern Dyson cordlesses, which is in some ways kind of annoying, because if you have any cordless that's newer than a V6, you can't use your Dyson upright attachments. That's still kind of weird. In the UK, they fixed this like 5 years ago. In the US, for some reason, the uprights that we have, even though they've just been updated, still don't use the same tool connector as the canisters and the cordless machines. Little weird, but you can get an adapter, so it's not the end of the world. And I do plan on getting one at some point, because I have a very big Dyson upright attachment ecosystem, and I'd love to be able to not have to buy the same attachments over and over again for the same brand but just a different machine. So one of these days I'll get one of those adapters and review that, because that I think would save me a lot of money. Although I do still plan on getting the missing attachments for this machine, with the exception of the crevice tool, because there's a light crevice tool. There's a crevice tool with a light on it. It's actually the same as the one that comes with my Dreamtech. I assume Dreamtech copied Dyson, but I could be wrong about that. And it looks really cool, because the Dreamtech version works really well. So having one on the Dyson would be really nice as well. So I do plan on getting that.
Oh, would you look at that? We got a nice little mess right here. Well, good thing we got a Dyson.
I pulled one up. Oh, I would say that did pretty good. You can even see the groom lines all over the upholstery. So for some reason, I don't know if this is like for some reason recently my upholstery has been getting all these weird stains on it. I don't think that's related to the vacuum, which is something weird I noticed. So if you're wondering why these don't come up, this isn't dust, these are just weird stains. I'm not sure where these are coming from, but I probably need to shampoo my upholstery. I did shampoo my other couch and those got out just fine, so I need to do that, but obviously I have to vacuum them first. And we can see the results. See the amount of fine dust that we got out of there. Pretty good. Of course, everything likes to congregate at the back. But other than that, pretty good. Also, if you noticed, whenever I was holding this, whenever I'm using it with one hand, I will often switch from one hand to the other. And that's been kind of a good way that I've kind of learned to balance the weight a little bit better, so it's not sitting on one hand long enough to cause strain to my shoulder and to my back. So if you're sensitive to heavy vacuums and you really want the more powerful inline design Dysons, that is something you can do to make the weight not as bad of an issue as it normally would be. Alright, here we've got our Mad About Mess. Now it's important to note, I have to say this caveat in every single one of my vacuum reviews, pickup tests on surfaces of carpet are not indicative of deep cleaning performance, but nevertheless, a lot of people like to see it, so let's just see how it copes. Now, the way the Dyson is designed, the V11, there's this very small intake right here, and a lot of stuff can get stuck in here because the actual dirt is going an entire 180 degrees to get into the bin, and it's a very small opening. It is very easy for stuff to get stuck in here, especially because the fitting on the inside is very small to begin with, and it narrows as well. This little half moon design isn't helping things either. So, it'll be interesting to see how it copes with this mess. Okay, this was a kind of stupid idea because I forgot that the bin on this is much smaller than an upright, so it's already at the max fill line, which you should not let it go above the max fill line, and I've gone a little bit above that, so I'm going to empty this and we'll try this a bit more. I've already committed to putting all this down, so we've got to clean it up somehow. Now, the way that you empty your Dyson, obviously I've already emptied it, so nothing's going to come out, is there's this little red flap right here. You want to make sure to have your finger off of the trigger because, unfortunately, Dyson did not design anything to prevent you from turning on the machine while the bin is open. But there is a thing that tells you when the filter isn't sealed. It'll actually tell you that the filter is not sealed, and it will show you how to reinstall the filter, how you twist it back on. And then it will update. So it'll also tell you if you have any blockages or any blockages in the airways and how to check it as well. So it's very smart. It'll tell you when something's wrong with it. So whenever you empty this, you push this red button and it shoots the bin open. This little rubber gasket right here actually cleans off the shroud, which is really cool. So a lot of hair that will be on here will get scraped off, and I've seen that work pretty much every time. It also shoots the bin open so it ejects the dirt into the trash, so that way the idea is that it's pushing enough forward momentum that the dirt will splash into the bottom of your trash can and hopefully not cause as much of a dust cloud as a normal bagless vacuum would do. And in my experience, as long as you do this right after you change your trash bag, then you won't have any problems with the dust splashing up in the face, at least not any visible dust. You will probably still get microscopic dust in the air because that's just what happens when you're ejecting a lot of dust at a high speed. It will have momentum, it'll possibly splash everywhere, but it at least won't be as bad as a different emptying system. One thing I will notice though is you press this and you close it, and you just close it in one motion, which is really nice. Sometimes this won't click properly, so you have to make sure you push it in. And the way that this ejects, dust can get all over the bottom of this, which I don't like. Dust can get on the bottom of the bin, it can get on this connector right here, and sometimes if there is a dust cloud that splashes when you suck up a lot of fine dust, the dust can sometimes splash back and get all over the outside of the bin, which is not good. But wiping down this whole mechanism after you've closed it up like this, just wiping it down with a dry cloth, does fix that. Alright, let's see how it did. Oh, one flake there. Random carpet fiber that's sticking out. not much, honestly. It did pretty good. So, doing a couple passes with the potato flakes, this is definitely, I can easily say it's the best. There's one flake right there. That's it. Maybe two. So, its ability to extract fine dust is easily the best out of any cordless vacuum that I've ever tested. At least I think. I don't remember how the loop did, but as far as my stick vacuums, the Honitor and this... Actually, I don't know if I've done a test on the Honitor or the Dreamtech with this. Either way, this actually beats most of the corded vacuums that I've done in terms of picking up the debris off of the floor. So that's pretty good. And we'll also talk about the deep cleaning abilities of this, of which it actually is better than I anticipated. So I found that, obviously, I haven't done any scientific tests because that's not the way my channel goes. I don't do scientific tests or anything like that, even though I'm perfectly capable of doing so, because at the end of the day, it's not relevant, because how something does on a spreadsheet or in a testing lab is, or even in a studio, is not representative about how a machine will work in your home. And of course, I don't know how a machine's going to work in your home, so the best thing I can do is use it in mine, explain the different variables, and if your home is similar, then you may get a similar result. So, after using the V11 as my daily driver, I can say that its performance is the best out of any stick vac that I've ever used. It's also better than a lot of uprights, believe it or not. This cleans better than the Shark Stratos that I just reviewed. The Stratos, given the fact that I don't have the fluffy head, the Stratos does clean better on bare floors, but the turbo brush of this works better than the turbo brush on the Stratos, although it is very close. The carpet cleaning performance is better on the V11 than it is on the Shark Stratos, at least in my home. I've heard other people who have the Vertex and the Stratos who say that in their home it works better than the Dyson. And obviously, I'm not here to discredit their experience. I'm not here to say that that's false, because at the end of the day, it's probably true, at least for their home. The same machines can function differently in different people's homes, and this is something that people never understand when reviewing vacuums. People will try to say that something is factual when it's not based on facts, it's only based off their experience. So based on my experience, I can say that the V11 cleans better than a lot of corded machines that I have, at least from competing brands. Now, I still don't think this cleans quite as well as something like Bissell Clean View or a Hoover Maytag Wind Tunnel, something like that. But is it very close? Yes. Is it closer than I anticipated? Yes. Is it very impressive at how close the performance is able to get, considering it's a battery-powered machine? Absolutely. And I've mentioned the Dreamtech, how I really like my Dreamtech, but the fact is that, again, the fact in my experience, I should say, is the Dreamtech doesn't clean as well as the V11. So, the Dreamtech is also cheaper, so I would hope that the Dyson cleans better, but that is the case. The Dyson does clean better. So, if you are shopping for a cordless machine, you've decided you want to go, you've decided you want to go cordless, you don't want to deal with the cord, you want a futuristic cordless vacuum, and you're wanting the machine that will clean the best out of all the cordless machines, at least the ones that I've tested, the Dyson is the obvious pick. It is the obvious pick. It cleans better, it filters better, and the build quality, while it has its issues, is pretty good. Now, let me explain what those issues are. The biggest issue that I found is right where you hold it right here. It's kind of hollow on the inside because that's where the battery kind of sits into this design. So if you hear how it's creaking and moving around? You might be able to hear that. And this bin also wiggles a little bit. So again, there's Now, the filters used to wiggle a lot on these cordless Dysons. On the V7, this wiggled a lot. This is airtight on here. And also, we'll talk about the filter for a sec. So you pop this out just like this. Dyson recommends washing it every month. It's your pre-motor and your post-motor filter in one unit. I don't recommend washing the post-motor filter. I recommend just leaving this part alone and just focusing on washing the pre-motor filter. You wash this about every month, although I've had this for a few months and I have yet to wash it. It is starting to get the slightest smell, but it's like very faint. You can't actually smell it. So I could probably go maybe 6 months without cleaning this before it gets any sort of smell. And yeah, you wash it. You just wash it with cold water. You don't use any soap or anything because that can mess up the filter. And you let it sit and dry for at least 48 hours. And once you put it back in, it's good to go. So very simple as far as filter washing. And the Cyclones are very effective. I've heard some people say the Cyclones aren't effective. I don't know where they get that from because, again, I've been using this all the time. And the Cyclones have done a great job at keeping the filter clean. And this is, again, this is a used machine. So this filter wasn't new when I got it. But I washed it once when I first got it. And I haven't yet to wash it again ever since I got the replacement motor. Now, I mentioned this like creakiness right here. I'm not a fan of that because the Dreamtech, this is a lot more solid, and this is cheaper too. Like there's no flex. This thing is really rugged. It's very solid. It feels like it's built very well. So the plastic on this is a lot more rigid, but I'm not going to sit here and say the Dyson isn't built well. I just feel like it would be nice if it felt like it was built better considering the high price tag. There was one time when I had this propped up against the wall, which it has a little pad here to prop it up against the wall, but it's not really designed for that. You really need to hang it in the wall dock, which it does come with a wall dock, but I do have the wall dock. I just don't have it mounted right now. It's just sitting on my kitchen counter with it plugged in. And I found that when I had this sitting against the wall, one of my cats bumped it or something. I think they ran past the power head and that jiggled it enough, and it was in the stick configuration like this. So it was propped up like this, and it fell all the way over, and it smacked on my hard floor. And I was very concerned that I just broken it because I've seen a lot of posts on Reddit and on the forums and all that where people have dropped these, and the Cyclones, because this is a very sharp, not sharp, but it's a very distinct edge of plastic, so a very sharp impact to this could break it, and I've seen these get broken a lot. But to its credit, it didn't break. So I dropped it. You can see the gasket. You can see it. I don't know if you can tell. I don't even think I can tell where it actually fell, because there's no obvious wear on the gasket where it would have fallen. So I did drop it, and it didn't break. So maybe it'll break the next time I drop it, and maybe I'll have to amend this review saying that it's can't handle a drop. Obviously, you're not supposed to drop it, but let's be honest, if it's designed to sit on a wall, it needs to be able to withstand some drops because people are going to drop it because it can't stand up on its own, so it's going to fall. It's just how it is. And if you're selling this to people who have bare floors, then yeah, that's going to happen. So, you know, I was worried. I thought that I had broken it, but I grabbed it, turned it on, and it worked just fine. So, in its defense, I thought it was a goner, and it didn't break. So, again, that's just anecdotal. There's not any formal evidence. I didn't drop this 10 times. I didn't get 10 of these and drop it at different angles. So, don't consider that a scientific test. If you drop yours, it may break. But mine didn't, so at least there is that. So the durability on this so far has been pretty good. So not much I can complain about there. So with all that said, what are my final conclusions on the Dyson V11 torque drive? Well, first off, I'll run down the list of everything that I've talked about to make sure there's not anything that I missed. I talked about the performance. I talked about its ability to clean carpets, its ability to clean bare floors. I talked about the power head and the differences between it and the one that comes with. I talked about all the attachments that it comes with. I talked about the wall dock. I talked about the filters and how to wash them. Talked about the battery. I will say there are two versions of the V11. There's one where the battery is held in with 3 screws. This is that version. There's 2 screws right here, and then there's another screw. Ooh, I almost dropped it again. And there's another screw right here. So if you need to replace your battery, you can do that. Batteries are kind of expensive, but it is a very big battery, so you do get what you pay for there. So this is the model with the screw-in battery, so you can replace it. They did update the V11 and the V15 with a click-in battery. Very similar. Oops. Very similar to what you see here, where you can just easily remove it. So they did address that. I do like that. And even if you have one of the older V11s, don't worry, you can still unscrew it if you need to change the battery at some point. Obviously, it's not designed to hot swap batteries, but with how good the battery life is on this, I didn't find that to ever be necessary. So, and obviously, I don't need the extra battery, so I'm not going to spend the extra money on the extra battery. So, there is that. One thing I will mention is that one thing I don't like about the dock that it comes with, which I could go grab, but I don't feel like it, you'll see what I'm talking about, is that on the dock, you can't store the larger attachments like the motorized turbo brush on the dock, which is kind of annoying because the V11 normally comes with a clip where you can store the 2 smaller tools on the wand, which is really nice, but if you could do that and store the 2 larger attachments on the dock, that'd be perfect, because then you would have all your attachments right there. But you can't. So you basically have to choose to either put the small tools on the dock or on the wand, and then have the other spots be empty while the 2 bigger attachments rot in the drawer. That seems kind of stupid, but for whatever reason, that's the way they designed it. Obviously, that has a very simple solution. Dyson could just release an updated dock where the actual attachment pegs stick out a little bit further from the housing, which they can do because when this is on the dock, it slots in right here. So the actual attachment ports are right here. You can just extend them out a little bit, and you're obviously grabbing it up like this so it wouldn't get in the way. And then that would allow you to store these larger attachments. So I'd really like it if Dyson could do that. That would address that issue, and then all the attachments would be able to store on board. And if they do that, make another attachment peg that, here, I'll just go grab it so you can see what I'm talking about. Alright, so here's the dock that I'm talking about. So I mentioned how when this is on the wall, the bigger attachments are just barely too wide for this to fit. And you can see, I honestly think that if this part was removable, this would just barely fit. But it's not, and it doesn't have to be. All Dyson has to do is just make these stick out a little bit further, maybe over to like here. And that way, even with the machine docked, you can see there's still, where the trigger is, or where the bin emptying trigger is, there's still plenty of space so they could extend this out. And they only need to extend this about 1/2 inch. And that would allow both of the, well, at least one of the bigger attachments to fit. But as you can see, if I take this off, if we put the turbo brush on here, even if it does fit, it blocks this other one. So if there was a version of this that was a bit wider and had both of these like sticking out a little bit further and a little bit more forward, that would be perfect, because then you could have both the turbo brush and the soft dusting brush on here, and then you could have the clip on the wand with the combo tool and the crevice tool, and then you'd have all your attachments. Then, what I think would be even cooler is if they're going to make this thicker, you'll have more space down here. So, my proposal is, again, Dyson, new dock design, have another peg that sticks out. It's extended a little bit. It'll look a little funny, but that's fine. This one will actually stick down a little bit, and that will have a space where you can put your fluffy head. So that way, when you have this docked on the wall, you have your 3 largest attachments, the fluffy head underneath, then your soft dusting brush and your turbo brush all fitting on this mount. And then, with your main wand, with the main cleaner head, and then the 2 small tools attached to it, you have all of your attachments with a spot on the official dock or on the machine itself, so that way all of your attachments are in one space. So you don't have to run to the closet to grab another attachment or leave it all sitting on the floor underneath your docked V11, which will look kind of tacky and messy. So Dyson, that's your free idea to upgrade this dock a little bit. And you can make it a little thicker as well if you want to, so it's a bit more robust. Do whatever you need to do. Just make that work. And that would be really cool. Now, Dyson, when the V10 came out, had a floor dock that had a lot of these features, but number one, they don't have that same functionality on the V11, which is really stupid. I don't know why on your more expensive vacuum you would have a dock that has less features. And also, why are the docks white? I know this is nitpicking, but why are they white? They don't match the machine at all. It looks like a toy. It doesn't look like it's even made by Dyson. And, I get it if you wanted to contrast the dark silver of this design. So just make it the light silver of the shroud. So it's still a lighter color, but it's not white. So that way it looks good with the vacuum docked in it. That way, for those of us that don't want to drill holes in the wall, we can have a dock that has all the attachment storage and doesn't look trashy. So, again, that's a bit nitpicky, but hey, when you're spending this much money on a vacuum, you gotta be nitpicky, because you gotta ask a lot, because you're spending a lot of your hard-earned money, especially in today's day and age, in the age of COVID and the recessions and all this crap. People need a better excuse to spend their money, because they probably have less money to spend in the first place, or they saved up longer to be able to invest in a vacuum that's expensive. So I want to make sure that those people are not wasting their money on something that either doesn't suit them or doesn't work. Now, the good news is that neither of those things apply to the Dyson V11. The Dyson V11 is my favorite stick vac that I've ever used, and it will probably continue to be my daily stick vac, with the one caveat of, if I get the updated 2022 version of the Dyson V8, I may replace this with that, because that machine, given I have plenty of full-size corded machines, I don't need as much power for a stick vac, and the decrease in weight going to the V8 I think would be beneficial for someone like me who has back issues. So if you already have a Dyson upright, or you already have a powerful upright vacuum that you use for your weekly mega cleans, and you're just looking for a quick basic stick vac to supplement that, I don't think you need to spend the money on the V11. Unless you get one on a really good sale and you don't mind the extra weight, then sure, because if you're not spending extra money, then you might as well get the more powerful machine, right? But if you're spending close to full price, which I don't think you should for the V11, I think either the V8 is a better choice, or maybe even the V10, or just spring for the V15. But again, if you find a good deal on this, anywhere from like $400 less, maybe $500, if it comes with a bunch of attachments, if you're looking at around that price for a V11, especially if it's the torque drive model, I would say pick it up, because this is a really good machine. It gets my personal wholehearted recommendation, as long as you get the proper floor head for your needs. If you have mostly hard floors, get the one with the fluffy head. You can buy it separately. Or if you have mostly carpets, get the torque drive head. Or if you have a mix of both, then the torque drive head should do you just fine. So you've got a really, really good cordless vacuum with great performance, great battery life, a pretty solid warranty that does, like I mentioned, still leave some to be desired, but you can't do much better in a cordless. And overall, it's a really good machine. Now, again, like I mentioned, if you have a smaller house and you're wanting this to be your primary vacuum, you could get by. I still would recommend getting an upright or a canister to supplement this machine for those occasional times that you want to clean the entire house with a more powerful corded machine. But if you want this to replace your corded vacuum, this gets pretty close. This gets damn close to replacing a corded vacuum. And here's the thing. There's plenty of YouTubers that say that this cannot replace a corded machine, and there's other YouTubers that say this in fact can replace a corded machine. And the fact is that they're both right and wrong at the same time. There are certain instances where this can replace a corded machine. In my house, a 3-bedroom house that is mostly carpet and only has a little bit of bare floors, has a lot of stairs, and has all that, and my house is, I believe, around 800 square feet. It's not a big house, not even close. But it is a house, it's not an apartment. I would say that this could replace my corded machine, and I could certainly be very happy with it. If it, of course, if it was going to replace my corded machine, I want it to have all the proper attachments, but I still would seek out an upright if I didn't have any, like the Dyson Ball Animal 3, for those bigger cleans. But this does do the job. So I know I'm kind of repeating myself. I'm trying to make sure that I say this very carefully, because the idea of this being able to replace a corded vacuum is very polarizing, and I don't want to piss people off. So if you have a small house, if you have an apartment, easily this could replace a corded vacuum. If you have a place that isn't too big with mostly hard floors and you get the version with the fluffy head, yes, this can replace a corded vacuum. If you have deep pile wall-to-wall carpeting throughout your house and it's a big house, no, this cannot replace a corded vacuum, but it is a good supplement. Does that make sense? So either way, if you get this for a good price, it's worth it, and it's definitely a really good vacuum. There are, like I mentioned, there are still some things I would like to see them change. I would like to see them address the weight issue without having to backport to an old model. I would like to see, even though, again, this isn't the right head for this machine, but I would like to see the updated version of this head have the laser on it from the soft roller, and I would like to see the laser soft roller used more universally, because it does look like a good feature, but I haven't tested it yet. At some point I'll get one of those heads and test it out. So that's pretty much it. This was Intellitech Studios with my in-depth review of the Dyson V11 torque drive. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it helpful. If I somehow, after all this time, managed to miss something about the V11 that you have a question about, please drop it in the comments below, and I will happily answer your question. So, if you have a V11, let me know what your experience is in the comments below. Let me know what vacuum you have, and if you're considering upgrading to the V11 or buying it alongside another machine, let me know what your thoughts are. This is Intellitech Studios signing out. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you all have a good one. Peace.